I will call the Dublin City Council meeting of May 8th back to order. Mike, could you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone. It's Police Week. Heinz, you want to come up and say a word about Police Week?
Mayor, members of council, thank you very much. As you know, this is Police Week. Every year, May 15th is actually designated as Police Memorial Day in the United States since 1961, when President Kennedy signed a bill into law that created that holiday. And we celebrate Police Week here the week before, and then the actual Police Week in Washington, D.C. will be next week. We are holding our annual memorial service here at the police department on Friday at 1 o'clock. This is a somber moment, obviously, this year, as we lost 5 members of law enforcement last year in Ohio, 2 of them right here in Central Ohio, Officer Steve Smith from Columbus PD and Officer Sean Johnson from Hilliard PD. So we are hoping everybody can come to the memorial service on Friday. We are also this week doing our Light Central Ohio Blue. We're participating in that campaign, asking citizens and businesses to show a blue light in their window or on the outside of the buildings. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, wait, thank you, Chief. I do have a proclamation I'd like to read honoring this week. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as the National Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as Police Week, and whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the City of Dublin play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Dublin, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of Dublin's law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression, and whereas the men and women of the Dublin Police Department are dedicated to providing a vital public service, now therefore I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of Dublin, on behalf of the Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of May 14th through 20th, 2017 as Police Week in the City of Dublin, and call upon all citizens of Dublin and all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe this week with appropriate ceremonies and activities to commemorate law enforcement officers past and present who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to their communities. We also honor those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the line of duty. Let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Signed this 8th day of May, 2017, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Thank you.
National Bike Month. Who's here as our bike ambassadors, I guess, that are going to come forward? Come on up, Warren, lead the way. Hi. Hey. How are you? Warren's nice to see you.
Warren, how you doing?
Bikes? Did you ride your bikes here? Okay, we have a proclamation for you guys as well. Whereas bicycles are an excellent form of recreation and transportation for the enjoyment of Dublin's scenic beauty, local attractions, and friendly neighborhoods, and whereas these bicycling activities help to make the city attractive to businesses, citizens, and visitors who enjoy the outdoors and healthy lifestyles, and whereas creating bicycle-friendly communities improves citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, boosts community spirit, provides traffic safety, and reduces pollution and congestion. And whereas May has been declared by communities throughout the nation as National Bike Month for each of the last 60 years, whereas the League of American Bicyclists, bicycle clubs, schools, parks, and recreation departments, police departments, hospitals, businesses, and civic groups throughout Ohio will be promoting bicycling as a leisure activity as well as an environmentally friendly alternative to the automobile during the month of May 2017. And whereas these groups are also promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation safety education in an effort to reduce collisions, injuries, fatalities, and to improve health and safety for everyone on the road. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists encourages all citizens to ride their bicycles to work, to the store, to the park, around their neighborhoods, to Warren's house, and with friends and family to promote the personal and societal benefits achieved from bicycling. Now, therefore, I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of the City of Dublin, on behalf of Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2017 as Bike Month in the City of Dublin, and urge all citizens and urge all residents to ride their bikes as often as they can throughout the month of May and beyond. Signed this 8th day of May 2017. So here you go. Who's the leader of this group? Thank you. Do you want to maybe just sort of explain what you guys do and how people can get involved?
Thank you, Greg. First of all, if you're a biker, this is probably one of the most spectacular cities of its size to bike in. The bike paths are the bike paths, the bike trails, the streets, the roads are just great. I've been riding this last couple of weeks, and I'm still in awe of this has been a great year for green, too, by the way, and Dublin is green, and it's just fantastic. And what bicycle ambassadors do is we're on those bike paths, and we see somebody that is lost or has some kind of problem, their chain came off their bike or something, we give them a hand. And we actually can call for medical aid or the police, and I've never had to do that, but I assume we might someday. I also want to mention something that my wife heard today, is that biking is becoming such a huge thing that AAA, as of today, is starting a service that they're seeing the future. Cars are going to be going, and starting a service today that if your bike breaks down, you get the same service you do in a car. They'll come get you, take you to your wherever you want to go, your destination. I think it's pretty cool that they'll do that for a bike now. So anyway, but Dublin is a great city. We're just a few of the many volunteers that we have. And Christina, of course, can tell you that in Dublin, it makes it a spectacular city. I can talk for hours about how great Dublin is, but I won't. Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else?
Oh, you keep that, Warren. Thank you very much for everything that you. Christine, is there a link on our website? Where are you? Was she in the room? Oh, there you are. Is there a link on the website where people can get on there, I'm assuming, and find out information about how to get one of these really attractive yellow shirts?
Well, you have to earn it.
I'm
Have to go through a little training, but yes, there's a link on our website through the volunteer page, or anyone can just email volunteer@dublin.oh.us.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, this is a very popular week for events here in Dublin. If you did not know, John, this is also Municipal Clerks Week. Did you not know that? So, I will read this. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas the municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through the participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations, and whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk, now therefore I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of the City of Dublin, on behalf of Dublin City Council, do hereby declare the week of May 7th through May 13th, 2017 as Municipal Clerks Week in the City of Dublin, and extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, deputy clerks, and to all municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities that they represent. And I'm going to come over here and hand this to who is, without doubt, we would all agree, the finest clerk in this entire United States of America, Ann Clark. That is a fact. Okay, citizens' comments. We did have a citizen sign in. Mr. Wells, John Wells, please, come on up. Welcome.
My name's John Wells. My wife Ann and I moved to Dublin in Waterford Village back in August of 1978. So we've been here for almost 39 years, and Dublin has been a great place to live, raise a family, and we've enjoyed the character of Dublin, the historic downtown, and easy to see the trees and greenery growing all around. Indian Run Falls is an easy walk for us, and you can enjoy the trail there, and just walking through and around Dublin in the center of the town it's still relaxing and fun to be, and just a good experience. And right now, the main center of Dublin has a great feeling and a not jammed in feeling yet. But all that appears to be changing. The new area of construction across the river and Riverside Drive seems to have started all right, okay, a few years ago. The multiple patio homes and the condo apartment buildings and so on, and still with some feeling of space. But there came now the 5 to 7 to 9-story high buildings, condos, apartments, hotel, parking, garages, stores, etc. Just jammed in, building after building, about 12 to 14 of them from my count, into a small space. And now building a series of condo apartments and so on up and down behind it, 3 stories high, one after the other, creating even more high density space. This is Dublin, Ohio, but you appear to be bringing in Long Island, New York. When all is done, what about the very increased high density situation and the resulting traffic problems that I see probably down the road very quickly? And your traffic circle on the other side of the bridge is a nightmare for some people. The new condo apartments now on just north of Oscars on High Street, which is only about 200 yards from downtown Bridge Street and Dublin Road cross, might overall be a nice looking building, but in my opinion anyway, it's too close to the center of Dublin, and it's going to create nothing but more density, traffic problems, and so on. And now, for their April 27th joint session, which my wife and I attended with Planning and Zoning, there were discussions or plans of possibly building 5-story buildings, offices, apartments, stores, and so on along both sides of West Bridge Street. Again, pretty much jammed in, just from what we could see and what the developers were presenting. 5 stories high. I mean, if you look north or south when you're walking down that street, if it's 5 stories high, you can't see anything but building after building after building. And now you go up and down Bridge Street and you see greenery and trees and 2-story buildings and so on, and it's just not jammed in like that. The traffic problems and the density is just going to increase more and more, and just more than I think Bridge Street's going to be able to handle. Again, all this density will just be around 200 yards from the city center of Dublin, right up from the crossover of High and Bridge Street. And that seems to be pretty much the situation, that anything 200 yards out from that little cross is fair game. So anyway, I'm very worried about it. My request to City and Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission is to please consider all of this as you go forward. Don't change Dublin, Ohio into Long Island, New York. Please keep the character and green views and historic feel here in our little city. It's just don't screw it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment about anything that's on their mind that's not on the agenda? You're standing up. Come on up here. You just need your name and address, please, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Molly Newberry, and my address is 9468 Jerome Road, Dublin, Ohio, 43017. I've been living in the Dublin School District for like 24 years, and I've seen you guys grow. I've been in so many different committees. I've volunteered for a lot of different things in the city of Dublin, and something happened to me on the 29th of April that I was really disturbed about, and I wanted to bring to you guys because my heart is in the place that I think it needs to be looked at. Mary, I think all you guys know Mary Fran Cassidy. She's the director of Dublin Singers. And I gave her a ticket because I'm in vaudevillities, and it was $25, but I paid for it and I gave it to her. And she gave me a ticket for me to see the Dublin Singers that performed at the Abbey Theater. Yeah, as a senior, it's only $7. That's not the problem. The problem was, when I first was a Dublin singer, we had like 45 people in the group. And we are good. We are so good, we sang at Carnegie Hall. I think it was in 2002. Anyway, Mary Francasi did, she retired at St. Bridget of Kildare. She was the CCD, they don't call it CCD anymore, CCD Religious Education there. She retired, so they had to find another place to move. So what they moved to is they went to Wendy's International, and I think they were there for 2 years, I think. And she told me when I went to go see the production on the 29th that they had at the Abbey Theater, there was only 13 people there. Actually, it was 14. One was sick, but it was 13 people. So we gone from 45 people down to 14. And I was upset. She says, well, she said, we got to leave Wendy's International. I go, why? She says, because a guy that was in the Dublin Singers is retiring, and we got to find another place. So I don't know, there's got to be a place in Dublin where the Dublin Singers could be able to practice. You know, she says, you know, money's always an issue, and, you know, the singers will have to pay for their clothes, pay for the music, you know, they pay for almost everything, you know. And the Dublin Singers are very dear to me. And I'm just asking the council if there's any way we could find a place for these guys to be able to practice once a week on Thursday night. Sorry. And continue to sing for the Dublin Singers. And also entertain Dublin as they have in the past.
Sure. Well, thank you for your service. Dana, can we hook up?
I'd be happy
Something.
happy to. I hadn't heard, you know, their situation lately. I appreciate.
She doesn't even know I'm here.
Okay, well,
That's how strong I am when I feel about the Dublin Singers.
This is going to be the worst-kept secret you ever had, because it's on TV now.
Well, not only that, as Dublin, the history of Dublin, remember they had the Dublin Community Band. And remember how great it was. And I go to, there's actually a place, I think, the Dublin Historical, about the Dublin Band. And it's so popular, and I still remember that. I didn't go to Dublin school, so I went to Hilliard, but that doesn't mean anything. The fact is that we got a lot of historical things here in Dublin. You know, it's just like the Irish Festival. It started out with St. Bridget of Kildare. They started, and the city took over it, which I had no problem. But my kid was in football, and I was one of those mothers when they had one of the first, you know, Irish festivals. I was there volunteering, cleaning up, doing all that stuff, you know.
Make sure before you leave that you hook up with someone from staff, and we'll also, I imagine,
Yeah,
how to get
but
over
like
to
I said,
Mary
we got so much rich history here.
Agreed.
I do not want to lose the Dublin Singers. I do want them to keep going on. I want to bring young blood in. You know, we got colleges here in Columbus. I want the college kids to come in and be experienced singing, and good dancing is what I want. We never maybe be as good at big as vaudevillities, but you know what? We got something there we can grow and make it bigger and better than a Dublin community band.
We are going to do everything we can.
That's where my heart is, sir.
We will do everything we can to help.
I really appreciate it, sir.
Sure. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm not seeing any other hands, so we will, wait a minute. Okay, consent agenda. There are only 2 items on the agenda. Would any council member like to remove either of those items?
I don't wish to remove one of them. I have one correction in the meeting minutes.
Okay.
It is very brief. I can hand it off to Ann. It's on page 14 of 30. It's attributed to me under item number 2, and it says, it talks about a 12-and-a-half-foot cliff, but what I was referring to was a 12-and-a-half-foot plinth. So I will hand that to you. That's all I have.
Okay, with the amendment to those minutes, I make a motion that we approve the 2 items on the consent agenda.
second.
Ann?
Saleh?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Second reading, public hearing, ordinance 22-17, Ann?
Amending ordinance 42-16, Appendix A, to allow for the collection of temporary membrane structure fire inspection fees and amend the fees for commercial plumbing inspections.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Stifler. I'm pleased to introduce to you ordinance 22-17. This ordinance makes two amendments. First, it allows the City of Dublin to collect Washington Township's $50 fire safety inspection fee with regards to temporary structures, usually tents. That would be collected in conjunction with the City of Dublin's $70 building occupancy inspection of tents, so that an individual would only have to stop at one location instead of two when applying for these types of permits. The second change is that it increases the fee for the commercial plumbing inspection and plan review from $75 to $200. The City of Dublin has a contract with Franklin County to perform these inspections, and in the contract, we have to match their fee. We changed our fees first, they acted second, so we need to adjust ours accordingly, and this ordinance will make that adjustment.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions from council?
No, just housekeeping, sounds to me like.
I just had one question. So there won't be any increase in the tent fees? It'll just be where the location of where the collections take place. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great. Thank you.
No discussion? Ann?
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Sam Rose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
And Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 23-17, Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to execute 3 utility easements granting American Electric Power easements on property owned by the city of Dublin along John Shields Parkway, just west of Village Parkway for John Shields Parkway Phase 2.
Yes, the title's pretty self-explanatory relative to this ordinance. There were maps included in your staff report, and staff recommends approval of ordinance 2317, barring any questions you might have.
Questions from council?
I just have a quick question in conjunction with some of the improvements down along the river. That utility line that comes across, there's a circuit that impacts some of the older neighborhoods on the west side of the river. Is this part of that circuit? I don't need an answer.
I don't know
to that.
offhand if it's part of the circuit. This is a relatively small connection.
Okay.
Just coming off of an existing easement.
But I would like a follow-up on that circuit if we're going to do any, as we do work down there, if that's going to see any improvement.
Okay. very good.
thanks.
Yes, will do. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Any discussion? Ann?
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Ordinance 24-17,
Amending the Dublin Codified Ordinances to prohibit the sale or other distribution of cigarettes, other tobacco products, or alternative nicotine products to persons under 21 years old.
Dana?
Good evening, members of council. Thank you. So at earlier meetings, concerns were expressed, I think, from a couple council members, as well as Dr. Crane, who had worked with us in introducing the tobacco legislation regarding licensing and potential of enforcement and how we might enforce such legislation. We've engaged further discussion with Dr. Crane and others, and we request that this be tabled at this time. I have engaged Franklin County Public Health, had a discussion with them about the idea of bringing together other cities that they contract with to address the issue of both licensing and enforcement. And spoke to them. They're very willing to have that come to the table and have that dialogue. I told them I would host that meeting and invite other member cities to see if we can't find a way to do licensing on a broader scale if other cities were considering such a legislation as opposed to the city trying to do both licensing and enforcement by itself. So a little bit more study before we would ask that you pass this, and would appreciate your patience with us trying to look at that a little bit more broadly.
Okay, thank you. I would just point out, we did get via email, and then there was a copy at our seats from the Duffy Law Office. If we could just incorporate that into the record as we accept their comments, and we'll read that information that they have to provide. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about before I make a motion to table? I would move that we table this ordinance and bring it back when staff recommends, when you guys make some progress on that.
Second.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Ms. Salee.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner.
Yes.
And Mr. Keenan.
Ordinance first readings and introduction, ordinance 25-17. Ann?
Creating a tax increment financing incentive district, authorizing the city manager to execute a First Amendment to a tax increment financing agreement and an infrastructure agreement, each originally entered into by the city of Dublin in connection with the Tartan West development via ordinance 0904.
I'll introduce it.
Angel?
Good evening, members of council. As Ann mentioned, we are looking to amend an agreement that the city has in place in conjunction with the Tartan West development. As a matter of background, in March of 2004, City Council approved an ordinance which established the Tartan West TIF district and also authorized the execution of a TIF agreement and an infrastructure agreement with Tartan Development Company West LLC. The Tartan West development was to have over 180 condos, 75 residential units, and have an anticipated value of over $200 million at build-out. Based on that valuation, the TIF was set to generate approximately $1.26 million in service payments annually to fund the public improvements that were identified in the TIF ordinance. These improvements were described, and the TIF ordinance also indicated which party was responsible for which agreement or which improvements. Specifically, there were 3 categories of improvements, broken down by category into A, B, and C. I'm not going to read through all of these, but they match what was in the agreement and what has been discussed in the past. Within the TIF agreement, the estimated costs of the improvements in total by category were enumerated. Category A, which was constructed and funded by the city by advances from other funds, was estimated to cost $5.5 million at the time the agreement was executed. However, through 12/31 of 16, the cost of those improvements was at $7.9 million, with the Avery Road and Brand Road roundabout remaining to be constructed. The Category B improvements, which were constructed by the developer with the city paying the cost of those improvements at the time the costs were incurred, was estimated to cost nearly $4.4 million. As of December 31st of 16, the actual costs were $6 million. Additionally, one of the improvements identified in the listing of Category B, the Highland Croy pedestrian tunnel, was not ultimately completed due to an extraordinarily high cost as a result of a gas main that exists in the area. And finally, the Category C improvements were constructed and financed by the developer. The estimated cost of these improvements was nearly $5 million in the agreement, while the actual costs were close to $6.6 million. The service payments were first to be used to repay the city for the expenditures related to Categories A and B. And then once the city was reimbursed for those costs, the developer would then be reimbursed for Category C. Clearly, the cost of each of the categories exceeded the estimate provided within the TIF agreement, which ultimately delays when the developer and the city will be reimbursed for the cost of the improvements. Further compounding this issue is the fact that revenues from the service payments have not materialized as expected. Due to the downturn in the economy and the delayed construction, the service payments received by the city through 2016 totaled $5.2 million when it was expected to generate $10.4 million. Due to the cost being higher than anticipated, as well as the revenue not materializing as planned, the administration is proposing to modify the priority of the service payments and the repayment of the costs of the infrastructure improvements. This slide details in words the priority of the waterfall of funds. However, for simplicity, I'd like to draw your attention to this slide, which graphically represents the payment. So under the modification, the city would first be reimbursed for Category A and B expenditures up to the estimates that were provided in the infrastructure agreement, the development agreement. After those costs are met, the developer would then be reimbursed for the Category C improvements, again, up to the costs that were estimated within the development agreement. Then it would revert back to the city with any amounts in excess of the development agreement getting paid to the city. So any differential between what the estimate was in the development agreement and what our actual costs have been would then be reimbursed to the city. The caveat to this is, as I mentioned earlier, the Avery Road, Brand Road is not yet complete, the roundabout. So in our discussions with the developer, we have agreed to cap those expenditures for reimbursement at $2,235,000. So once the city gets reimbursed for then the Category A and B expenditures in excess of what the estimate was in the development agreement, the developer would then get reimbursed for the Category C expenses, the variance between what was estimated and their actual costs. And then finally, the city would then be reimbursed for any costs for the Avery Brand roundabout in excess of $2,235,000. And then finally, the developer would be reimbursed for interest. We are asking for approval of at the second reading and public hearing to be held on May 22nd, based on the fact that this repayment model, using conservative estimates, still would result in the city being fully reimbursed for its expenses. To the extent that service payments increase, the repayment to all parties would be accelerated. And with that, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Questions from council?
Get it.
Okay, there will be a second reading and a public hearing on the June 26th council meeting, so not the next one. Phew, out, not till June 26th. The agenda I had was June 26th. What did your agenda say on the date? It'd be the next meeting.
Ordinance, yeah, the 2517 is on,
Oh, I'm looking at the next one.
Right.
May 22nd, sorry about that, okay. Ordinance 29-17, Ann?
creating a tax increment financing incentive district, declaring improvements to the parcels within the incentive district to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, requiring the owners of those parcels to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of those service payments, specifying the public infrastructure improvements that benefit or serve parcels in the incentive district, authorizing compensation payments to the Dublin City School District and the Tolles Career and Technical Center.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you. Angel?
Thank you. As you are aware, we had a public hearing earlier this evening, so for the sake of expediting this process, I'd be more than happy to walk through the same slides, but I will leave that to council.
Yeah, that's not necessary. We did it once. Does
Okay.
council have any questions, Amy?
No, no questions.
No questions?
She answered all her questions.
Okay, she answered all questions. Now, this is the one that's not until June the 26th.
That is correct.
All right, got it. Second hearing on June the 26th. Thank you, Angel. Ordinance 30-17, Ann?
Providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $1,395,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the municipal sewer system.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Tim. Angel?
Would it be okay if I addressed all of these three bond ordinances together as one?
Sure.
Okay.
Should we just go ahead and read
Jennifer,
those?
to lump those together, or?
We'll just
Oh,
read them.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we pull all those together.
30-17, 31-17, and 32-17 will be presented
Mm-hmm.
together.
I'll second I'm sorry. Mr. Keenan? Yes. Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
And do you want me to read the titles then of 3117? Read the titles as well. Providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $6,800,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the city's facilities. And 3217, providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $27,375,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the city's vehicular and pedestrian transportation system within and serving the Bridge Street District.
And I'll introduce those two additional ordinances as well.
Thank you, Tim. Now, Angel.
Thank you. In advance of your consideration of these ordinances this evening, staff used the time at our first quarter financial update to discuss the city's debt profile, including statutory debt limitations, where we stand in relation to those limits. Our debt program is laid out in the 5-year CIP, which was approved last fall, and the possible impact of future debt on the city's bond rating. That presentation, along with the narrative that we provided in council's packet, is on the city's website. So for your consideration this evening, first is ordinance 30-17, which authorizes up to $1,395,000 to be issued for sewer lining and manhole rehabilitation, the Deer Run sanitary sewer upsizing, and the construction of sewer lines to areas 11A, 11B, and 13 as outlined in your staff memo. The debt service will be repaid from sewer fund revenues. Ordinance number 31-17 provides up to $6.8 million in bonds for city facilities. As outlined in the staff memo, the funds would be used to finance the service center renovation and expansion, improvements to the 5800 building, and what we will be adding for the second reading is to include the construction of 2 salt barns, although we will not be changing the dollar amount. The salt barns were approved as part of the 2017 through 2021 CIP and are only being included in the event that there are excess bond funds that we can use those towards a project that we had expected to issue debt for at some point in the future. The final ordinance is 32-17, which authorizes the issuance of up to $27,375,000 for improving the city's vehicular and pedestrian transportation system. Specifically, the funds will be used for the North High widening as well as the construction of the pedestrian bridge. Both contracts have been approved by City Council. The bonds issued for the city facilities will be paid from income tax revenues, where the bonds issued for the transportation system will be paid from income tax revenues and service payments received within the Bridge Street District area. All bonds issued will be amortized over 20 years. Staff, along with the city's municipal advisor, will be working with Key Bank as part of a negotiated sale. Key was selected in 2015 from a competitive RFP process and assisted in a successful issuance that we conducted in 2015. Part of the preparation for the sale will include a rating presentation to Moody's and possibly both Fitch and Standard & Poor. We intend to provide them a comprehensive update on the city's development, focusing in on the Bridge Street District, as that was a large component of the 2015 issue. And certainly with this issue, specifically the pedestrian bridge and the North High widening is a very important part. As I mentioned in the staff memo, I will not be in attendance at the next council meeting. The only change I am expecting at this point in time is the change to the purpose on the city facilities one to include the salt barns. But if there are any questions that are asked tonight that require follow-up, I will make sure that council has that. However, we are requesting approval at the May 22nd meeting. Based on this timeline, we will expect to have the funds received by the end of June or early July. So in addition to myself, Jim Hargrove and Brian Cooper, both with UMBA, and our bond counsel, Chris Franzman, are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Angel. Questions from council? Chris?
I had a few questions. Angel, thank you for putting together this spreadsheet. I know it was a lot of work, and I appreciate having this history that dates back to '74 with all of our bond sales. It was really interesting to walk through, and really, it's kind of a lineage of our history, really. So it was very interesting. So I had handed Angel beforehand, sat at my desk at lunch today and tried to put together, I was trying to wrap my mind around these bonds that we were selling and what they might look like. And so I am not a presenter, a preparation person, so it's very simple. And I hope that this is just a beginning of a discussion that we're able to continue at some point in the future. But I walked through the list that you gave us, and I tried to assign them a color based on what the bond was for. So in blue, it was water and sewer issues. In orange, it's transportation, roadway, construction. The red is services and safety issues. And the green is Parks and Recreation associations. And then in gray is Bridge Street, and then there were 2 Duke Realty TIF and Meditech TIF that I left in white. I was assuming that those might be relative to economic development. And so I went through and assigned all of the items on the spreadsheet a color. And it was interesting that before we vote on these bonds this evening, for our Parks and Recreation bond issue throughout the history of our community, we've issued roughly $25,382,000 worth of bonds, which represents the North Pool, the South Pool, the Rec Center, and some other things that we see through there. Service and safety, we've issued $22.5 million worth of bonds. This is been largely upgrades to our service center and some safety issues with our police call center and things of that nature. For water and sewer bond issues, we're around $46.5 million. Transportation, which includes the construction of some of our bridges, Emerald Parkway, a number of different transportation key elements in our city, we're just shy of $90 million. The economic development piece that I mentioned was about $1.5 million. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I completely understood is that the Bridge Street portion of that spending prior to this evening was roughly $83 million, or that represented about 31% of all the bonds that we have issued throughout our history. After tonight, and then I looked to identify all the bonds that have been paid. So we have fulfilled the requirements on roughly $60 million worth of bonds that are no longer on the dole through 2017. So I did the same for after we passed these bonds this evening in the lower right-hand corner there. And the percentages went up significantly because it brings us to over $110.5 million of spending in Bridge Street. And I realize that this evening we're only talking about the sale of bonds, and I completely appreciate that. This is the time that we are going to write the checks to pay for the things that we have already agreed to do. But I think it's important that we at least make sure that we're understanding that at this point, the percentage of our outstanding debt, we're going to be at about 45.25% in Bridge Street. The Bridge Street district was going to represent roughly 6% of our city, and I would say we probably haven't started construction in half of it. We'll say roughly 3%. And so I just want us to be reflective that we have over 45% of our debt that we have ever issued, or that we have outstanding in our community, and roughly 3% of our land mass. And I just thought it was important that we illustrate that, and I hope that we can have discussions regarding this in the future. I apologize, Angel, I sat down at lunchtime to do this and had meetings the balance of the afternoon. But I would like to continue the conversation and make sure that our spending is representative of our entire community, and that we don't have too many eggs in one basket. I'm a little concerned that we've placed a great deal of our equity in a very small space. But again, I realize that tonight, and by voting this evening, we're only agreeing to pay the bills that we've already committed to. That, this isn't an endorsement of the project, or it isn't any of those things. It's simply committing to pay the bills that we've already signed on to incur.
So we're not voting on them tonight, though?
Yeah. Well, on this vote, for this ordinance.
Mayor, can I?
Sure, yeah.
That's a great perspective and a very good analysis. The only, the thing that I think as we continue the dialogue that would be very important too to keep in mind is this is a snapshot in time. And I think a really good dialogue with that would be, as we look back in time, since we do have such a great record of this, is how did that look in snapshots of time looking back? Because I can think about times when taking on France Road, at the time we had to run a voted bond levy to do that, as well as a rec center. We had to vote for those, I believe, I could be wrong, to get the capacity to be able to build those. So as a percentage of what we had to spend at the time, that was significant. If you look at taking on an Emerald Parkway at the time, depending on the snapshots in time. Also, if you look at there's probably a time when the sewer debt, in comparison to a lot of the other debt at that particular time, was probably, in relative to our revenues, was probably about the same percentage to build the largest capital project you would never see. And that set conditions for economic development and so forth, and to serve residents. So love the analysis, love the color coding. That's the kind of person I am. So, but
I-
I would be really interested in this dialogue about looking at that and those kind of snapshots, because I think that's important to keep that kind of a perspective.
I think that is wonderful, and this was just my 1-hour attempt to try to make sure that I understood where
That
we
would take
were,
me 2 days to do, so.
where we are and where we're going. And thank you for indulging me. I love the idea of looking at snapshots, and I would like to also try to incorporate in that dialogue return on investment and safety issues, and just really think about the whole thing and wrap our arms around. And I know that I have not had the opportunity to have that conversation with my fellow council members, to say, you know, these are measurable return on investments. These are tangible and intangible return on investments. And it's a lot of money, and it's a small space. And I suspect that it's probably one of our greatest expenditures in such a small area. I think you're exactly right with the water and sewers, to the benefit of the community as a whole, and certainly in the environment would be impacted by that. So I just wanted to throw something out there to get the conversation started. Thank you, and I appreciate all of the information you provided, and hopefully we can, this isn't perfect, I'll say that right now because it was done by me, but I think it kind of speaks to the heart of where my thoughts are.
Would you be willing to share that with?
Sure. I gave it to Angel, and do you want me, I can email out, or you can email out, the files are attached right there.
So Dana, arguably, if you're going to classify stuff, these issues in different areas, a fair amount of Bridge Street could be put forth as economic development numbers. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that'd be part of the discussion.
And parkland
How do
and
you
road
think the-
road and transportation and a lot of other areas. So I guess I'd be interested to see maybe taking a look at how that is put into the different buckets. Because arguably you can, argue semantics about where things belong and what they are.
Right, but I think that's part of the discussion, right? So-
Agreed,
So that
yeah.
we get to have an
Yeah, I'm not-
opportunity to sort of vet that through each other.
I hope there's no arguments. I just want to start the conversation. That's
Yeah,
all.
I think this sort of thing is good to have in Finance Committee and have those kind of discussions in Finance Committee or wherever you want to have them, but that'd be a good use of that time.
Tim?
Yeah, I think those are interesting comments and perspectives, and there are a lot of different ways that this information can be analyzed. I would note that, many of these issues are 25 to 30 years old, so let's factor in inflation. I don't know what is the going rate, historically, whether it's 2 to 3%, but let's add that cost to it. And so, I mean, to the extent we're comparing it to the Bridge Street District, this could be looked at from many perspectives. It certainly makes for an interesting conversation, and I'm, all for it. One of the things, Angel, that I noticed, and this is certainly ballpark, but as I looked at this, it looked like a number of these bonds and the amount of, this is very rough numbers, between 30 to 40 million is going to mature over the next 3 to 5 years.
That's correct.
So that's worth noting as well. That's all. Thank you.
John?
No, I just want to say that, I think we were all well aware of the expense of the project, going into it. And I think Dana made a really good point. We have laid out our necks on the line for a lot of things that make the city great, and Franz Road and all the rest of the rec center was in comparison at the time to this kind of adventure. And I think, when you talk about a small space, we're talking about a walkable city and rebuilding an entire city. And for the investment, I think this is really not that big of a deal, because we took a driving range and a shopping center and a very important intersection that really had a lot of traffic problems and turned it around in 5 years and turned this thing into a city that's going to be possibly used by senior citizens and young people, generate a lot of economic changes where, we've got thousands, maybe 40,000 people driving into the city every day, jamming up the road network, and hopefully some of those young people who are at the Short North or these other places they consider more desirable might move up here and we can start moving this city on and mitigating some of these problems. But I think scale-wise, it wasn't that big of an adventure. I mean, it is what it is. And when you're done looking at it and the bridge comes in and all the rest of it, it's going to be a monumental improvement to our civilization here in Dublin and to everybody's quality of life. So I agree with what you said also, Mike. And Dana, that this, we've sat here a long time, and we've taken a lot of interesting chances and risks, but they were always for the benefit of the city, and we've been very fortunate they all worked out. And I think so. That's why we're considered the premier neighborhood in the community in the network of Greater Columbus. So but I appreciate the analysis, but I think it was the right move, and I think we're going to go on forward with a even better community. Thank you.
Great. So between you or Angel, you'll email that around to everybody. I agree with Dana. The color coding really helps me. It would have taken me 2 days to figure out I was never going to get it done. So I appreciate it. I think it is a very, very important conversation and important that we keep it all in perspective. So thanks for bringing that up. You have anything? Anything else, Chris?
That's all I have. Thank you.
We need to vote on these one at a time, right? Oh, we're doing this all in the
Second
next, at the
reading, yes.
22nd, May 22nd, right? That was just the presentation. Okay, second reading, public, boy, all these come out good. So we are up then to introduction, public hearing, resolutions. Resolution 38-17, Ann?
Establishing the Citizens Advisory Committee, which shall provide a recommendation for a transitional design element of the new Dublin branch of the Columbus Metropolitan Library.
I'll introduce it.
Thanks, Jim. Dana?
Yes, good evening again. So at Council's April 24, 2017 meeting, Council approved the basic plan for the proposed Dublin branch of the Columbus Library with the following condition, and that was that the applicant and the city engage in a collaborative committee-based process to define a transitional design element that is integrated with the library's public space. The Columbus Metropolitan Library and the city desire to now advance the design of this element with the goal of establishing a strong visual connection between Dublin's historic identity and the future library. The city and Columbus Metropolitan Library desire that an advisory committee of civic leaders be established to assist with and help inform the recommended transitional element for the project. And the advisory committee will need to work pretty expeditiously in order to ensure that the recommendation of this element is concurrently reviewed with and approved ultimately by City Council, sort of in conjunction with final development plan and so forth. So that puts a sense of urgency on all of this. All that said, though, the community-based committee will be limited. We are recommending to 5 persons who would join with 2 Columbus Metropolitan Library representatives. That would be the CEO, Pat Lazinski, who's with us here this evening, and Allison Circle, Chief Customer Experience Officer, who's also here with us. Thank you for being here this evening. And they would undertake in this task alongside the other recommended members, who would be, if you agree, 5 appointees that would be Dublin individuals with backgrounds in or representative of public art. So that would imply the Dublin Arts Council, the Dublin Historical Society, the Historic District Business Association, Architectural Review Board, and Planning and Zoning Commission. You can, as you saw in the staff report, there were certain positions with that, probably the chair of those, or in the case of the Arts Council, the executive director, and then the chair of the Historic Dublin Business Association. And this effort would be supported by MBBJ, who is the library designer, as well as Moody Nolan, who is the garage designer, as well as MKSK, who has done a lot of work for us on streetscape and landscaping and the park nearby and so forth, as well as supported by city staff. So that's all the background, as well as we have provided a tentative timeline that we suggest be followed. Not that it has to be, but maybe the best efforts to follow this. And staff recommends approval of Resolution 3817. And other than any questions you may, if you have any questions, Terry and I think, can tag team those.
Questions from council? Pat, Allison, you guys want to say anything? You good? We appreciate you coming. Okay, so we'll vote on this resolution, and then I will make a motion with respect to the individuals that are in those seats. Okay. Ann?
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
And Ms. Salee?
Yes.
That commission having been established, I would then make a motion that we appoint the individuals that are in those seats to the actual body committee itself. Those are the Dublin Arts Council Executive Director David Guion, the Chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission Vicki Newell, the Chair of the Architectural Review Board Dave Rinaldi, the President of the Dublin Historic Society Tom Holton, and the Historic District Business Association Chair Rick Gerber. I move that we appoint those 5 individuals to the committee.
I'll second.
Ann?
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Pat and Allison. Good luck. We appreciate your efforts. Resolutions 39-17 and 40-17, I make a motion that we suspend the rules and we consider those 2 resolutions together. Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Ann on 39-17?
I'm sorry, adopting a statement of services for proposed annexation of 2.9 acres more or less from Washington Township, Franklin County to the city of Dublin. In Resolution 4017, adopting a statement regarding possible incompatible land uses and zoning buffer for a proposed annexation of 2.9 acres more or less from Washington Township, Franklin County to the city of Dublin, Ohio, as required by Section 709.023C of the Ohio Revised Code.
Thank you, Ann. Jennifer?
I'll introduce those resolutions.
Jennifer?
Good evening, council members. On April 26, 2017, Aaron Underhill and David Hodge filed this annexation petition with the Franklin County Commissioners. The petition is, as Ann stated, for 2.9 acres. This property is part of a larger residential development currently being planned by Kaufman Development. The proposal's been reviewed informally twice by Planning and Zoning Commission and was generally viewed favorably. This petition is filed as an expedited type 2, so recently we've been dealing more with regular annexations. With an expedited 2, it moves much faster. The property is presently located in Washington Township, so there's no adjustment of boundaries afterwards. There are 2 things that must happen, 2 pieces of legislation that council must pass when this type of annexation is filed. First, we must adopt the resolution on statement of services, and that's provided, which delineates all the municipal services we'll provide to the area upon annexation. And second, we have to pass a resolution on incompatible buffers, and it simply says if we approve a zoning that's very different from what is remaining in Washington Township, then we have to provide a buffer area. So it's required under the Ohio Revised Code. If council approves these resolutions tonight, we will provide them to the Franklin County Commissioners, who will then must grant the proposed annexation if neither the municipality nor the township object. Staff recommends approval of Resolution 39-17 and Resolution 40-17, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? No questions? We have to vote twice, though, right?
Yes.
Okay, Ann on Resolution 39-17?
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Salee? Yes. Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Okay, on to the other portion of the agenda. Michelle, the Tantrum Theater.
Good evening, members of council. We're excited that Tantrum Theater is set to begin their 2nd season in our Abbey Theater. And similar to last year, they are requesting 2 waivers. The first one relates to the serving of alcohol for their 3 opening receptions of each one of their shows. Under the current code, the serving of beer and wine is limited only to the community hall. This waiver request would allow for serving of wine and beer in the theater lobby, the lobby area adjacent to the theater, the 2nd floor open area that's adjacent to the outside lobby. And those dates for these waivers are also listed within your memo. And the second waiver is related to the extension of rental hours of the Abbey Theater. Currently, under the code, rental hours for the Abbey Theater can only be extended up to midnight on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This waiver request would allow for rental of the Abbey Theater up to midnight, 7 days a week, as needed and communicated with city staff to accommodate rehearsal and performance times. So their whole schedule has been run by our rec services staff, and there's coverage able to fulfill that need as well. Staff's requesting council take action on both of these waivers this evening. I did want to note that Rachel Cornish is here tonight. She's the Director of External Relations for OU's College of Fine Arts. And if you don't have any questions for her, I know she wanted to just say a couple words about this summer season.
Please welcome Rachel. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me here this evening and for hearing these waivers. I stand here on the evening before our first rehearsal for our second season. We have 3 shows again this season. The first is Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, so that's going to be a fun comedy. I'm particularly delighted to say that we have 11 school children from the Dublin community that you will see upon stage in the Abbey during that show. So I think that will be a lot of fun. The second show is a musical called Caroline or Change. When it played on Broadway, it was nominated for 12 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. We have a number of Broadway veterans that are in that musical, so I think we're going to see some outstanding performances. And then our final show of the season is called Into the West. It's a family show. It's an Irish show, and will also run concurrently with the Irish Festival, as our Irish show did last year. It's a 3-person show with a musician. Music is played throughout, and I believe that the younger set will really enjoy that play, although I would bet money that their older companions are also going to be delighted by the show as well. We have 130 members of the company this summer, a budget of about $1.3 million, and we're just really excited to get to work and be inside the community again this year.
Do you know generally when the dates are? Is it pretty much once a month? Month?
The dates for the performances, we have our first performance May 30th is when we begin previews for Midsummer Night's Dream, and our final performance is, I believe, August 18th or 19th.
And how do we get that information? Like if somebody
It
wanted.
is actually on my website, on the website for Tantrum Theater, and I can provide a schedule of performances to Michelle, and she can
That'd be fantastic.
deliver them.
Can you say a few words about, okay, the last year's performances were extraordinary.
Thank
I think everybody that saw them thought, well, the first one was every bit as well done as something you would have seen on Broadway. And the entire stage settings and mechanics and everything was, and the acting was just awesome. Can you say something to the people of Dublin about the fact that this used to be a performance that was held up in New England, and now we've been fortunate enough to have it moved, OU has moved it to the city of Dublin.
Sure. So Tantrum Theater is the professional theater of Ohio University. The goal of the theater company is to provide professional development and relationships for the students of Ohio University, but in doing so, we create a professional theater to bring great art into a community. It's I liken it a lot to a teaching hospital, so that it works in conjunction with a medical school. It's the same exact idea. So for many years, Ohio University worked with a theater in Cape Cod, called Monomoy Theater, and that was a relationship for close to 60 years. And the decision was made when the campus was beginning to be developed up here, along with the Bridge Street District, that Dublin would be a prime community candidate for an arts organization of this size.
I have just a quick question for you.
Sure.
Last year, it was requested that you guys put up some kind of, and it's in here too, of a boundary, just do the alcohol. I was just curious to see how that worked for you.
It worked quite well. We were really happy with it, and I think that we will do it again this year, as noted in the waiver. There is only one performance, the first performance, where we couldn't get the community hall, it was already booked. My preference is that these receptions remain in the lobby of the theater and in one of the Tala rooms. However, for the first performance, we can't accommodate everyone into those spaces, so we'd like to go out into that adjacent lobby area. I believe it is after the rec center is closed when these receptions will take place, but we'd be happy to put up a barrier again this year.
Any other questions from council? Amy?
Michelle, did everything work out well last year?
I'm sorry.
Did everything work out well with the waivers and the alcohol serving and everything?
It did. We did bring forward one waiver to serve alcohol at the performances, and OU decided not to move forward with that. There was just a cost issue with getting a caterer, so they didn't move forward with that. But everything else worked out perfectly with the waivers.
Great, thank you.
And I saw, Michelle, a memo from you in our packet about the Performing Arts Center, and I know Tantrum Theater being there is a temporary situation, and the fact you guys are still investigating this whole Performing Arts Center is really exciting. I mean, that's something that the city of Dublin can be very, very excited about.
Thank you.
So I hope everyone comes out and supports all of your shows as much as they possibly can.
Thank you.
So I move we approve the 2 waivers for the Tantrum Theater as listed.
Greg, can I ask one question real quick? I know their first series of shows are during the Memorial Tournament. I know that we utilize that lot for some shuttle things. Are we going to be okay with parking?
Yes. Because we have the overflow parking, I don't think it's going to be an issue, and primarily because of the timing of their event and when people are shuttling back at the end of the day, I think we'll have good turnover there.
Hopefully
I feel
that-
pretty confident we will.
Friday might be the only hairy
Friday's
night,
usually the
because I know that's your grand opening. Thank you for those invitations today, and I apologize, I won't be able to attend, but Friday night will be probably the biggest challenge, because people tend to leave the course later that evening, and you have your event starting, so hopefully we'll manage it and make sure maybe Friday we try to steer as many people in another direction as possible.
Dana, if I may, we didn't have any problems at all last year during the tournament. We were actually quite delighted by that. We were really surprised. Michelle and I have talked about a couple of dates. I've already met with Allison Leroy to discuss parking and shuttle service during the Irish Festival.
If you would stay up there for just a moment, if I may. So will this just run for that 1 week, that one weekend?
No,
The Midsummer Night
Midsummer
performance?
Night's Dream runs from May 30th through mid-June.
Okay, all right. I was just going to say that, there are a lot of us, we're committed to the Memorial Tournament
Yeah.
and, that conflict there, but you've got a larger picture and 3 performances to get on stage,
Yeah.
during the 3 months of the summer. So anyway, thank you.
Yes, of course.
I think you seconded, right? Did anyone
I'll
second the
second.
motion?
Are we
Did Nat?
voting on both waivers at one time?
Yeah, both waivers at one
Okay.
time.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Saludo?
Yes.
Staff comments, Dana?
Only 2. One, it's kind of a interesting historical tidbit I didn't realize while we were sitting here earlier this evening when the lady was here on Dublin Singers, but the 2 co-founders of the Dublin Singers were sitting amongst us, and I didn't realize that. One was Ann, and the other was Terry Vogler, that they really co-founded the Dublin Singers and then hired the person who ran it, and then, so Terry texted me that, Ann, and mentioned that you guys were very involved in setting that up. So I just wanted to mention that. The other thing is, I recommend that we cancel next week's council workshop. The reason being is I'd like to have more engagement with property owners and a little bit more follow-up research on some of the items that we were proposing to speak to. And I just feel that we will be better prepared at a later date, to be determined, but hopefully not too far off in the future. I apologize for any inconvenience, first of all, but I appreciate your support of that if it's possible.
Okay, nothing else? Committee reports. Amy, P&Z.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Admin, Mike.
Yeah, just a couple quick matters. Dana continues to work on some compensation comparables for us to finish our project with respect to the annual reviews. And then finally, we talked this evening about moving forward to direct Dan to begin the process on the advertising for the replacement of ARB. So we'll go through our normal boards and commissions process, put it out. We did have a discussion about, in the call for applications, to make sure you mention the criteria. While it's not absolute that they have to fall within the framework of a criteria, that these are the areas so that we may get a better cross-representation. And I think those are all listed in the, you have that information, I know. That's for the replacement of Thomas Munhall, who's the current vice chair and is resigning his position. Okay, that's all.
Thanks, Mike. Community Development, John?
Nothing, thank you.
Finance, back to you, Mike. Public Services, Amy?
No, thank you.
Friendship Association, Christina?
No, nothing.
Warpsy, Tim?
We have a meeting this Thursday.
Your Logan Union Champaign County Regional Planning Commission?
Nothing there.
How about US 33 Innovation Corridor?
We're meeting this Friday morning.
Okay. John, Dublin Arts Council?
Just want to thank everybody for supporting the garden party. It was a huge success. They did a really extraordinary job. That is a great, hardworking team of people. I watched them knock the thing down and put it up, and it was really a beautiful, beautiful event. I want to remind everybody that we have, we're very fortunate in having a genius quality artist in Dublin right now, Fujiwara. We're sort of introducing him to the United States. Once you go into this exhibit, you'll see that, he may have been an engineer, I don't know, an architect, but the mathematical detailing is so minute on these giant wall panels that this guy executes, and he also does small figures and some other kind of art that once you analyze in the one room his genius and then see the photographs of some of the stuff he's created, you're looking at really a highly skilled, very unusual artist. Extraordinary technical ability. You see a lot of art shows and you walk in them and you go, okay, I get it, but really, you look at it and think, okay, I understand what they're trying to say, but it's not that cleverly executed. Or when you're dealing with ceramics, and of course it shrinks when you heat it, and the perfection of how all this is locked together is really brilliant. So for humanity, you might read the Metro page, you see, there's murders, there's killings, there's rapes, there's this, there's that, and then you go to an art museum and you look at a Monet or a Van Gogh, or in this case, here in Dublin, Fujiwara, you are totally uplifted. So we're very fortunate, and this show will run until June the 5th. So I want to welcome you all to it.
Great. Thank you, John. Board of Education, Christina?
We don't have another meeting on the books as far as I'm aware yet. We did meet several weeks ago and had good dialogue moving forward, but anticipate their summer break starting, so we will probably resume again in the fall.
Great, thanks. Washington Township. Chief, you got anything you want to share with us? All proud and happy? All right. Council Roundtable. Chris?
Couple things. Had the pleasure of talking with the Glacier Ridge Leadership Council on the 25th, and they were such a wonderful group of kids. And I tell you, these teachers and their staff are really building some great leadership skills in these kids. Had the opportunity to go to the opening reception at the Arts Council that evening, and it was really nicely done. And that is a fantastic setting to display that particular gentleman's art, some of it inside, some of it outside, and it really does look fantastic. Had the opportunity to meet with some folks from Sienna Innovation Labs, and really on the 26th, and it was fascinating to see the things that they're doing and the opportunities that they give our local businesses for disaster recovery efforts and things of that nature, and really appreciated that. Arbor Day celebration, unfortunately, we got rained out after a little bit. Matt had to clear out the tents because there was some pretty rough weather coming in on that Saturday morning, but they set up a great thing. We took a couple of the seedlings home and got them planted, so look forward to watching them grow. The Citizens Police Academy dinner on the 4th was well attended, and hopefully they raised a lot of money for a really worthy cause, and it was appropriate that it was during this week of Police Memorial Time. As John mentioned, the garden party on Friday night was really well done. And I tell you, those guys worked hard. They had so many wonderful items. People were just wanting to walk out of there with as much as they could carry because there were so many wonderful auction items to to bid on. Community Service Day was the 6th, and we had over 300 of our residents participate in Community Service Day, and they went out to all of the, not all of the, many of the schools and homes, and I know Christina was there as well, and it was really a privilege, and our community was very excited to go and serve their neighbors, and that was encouraging. So there's a lot of good things happening, and I'm grateful to be able to witness it.
Christina?
Thanks. I'll ditto many of my gratitude. We saw each other at several of those items. And I'll put in a plug for our bicycle advocates, because my in-laws live very close by to Warren and B, and we like to see Warren and B riding around on Memorial Drive like, hey, there's Warren and B. And they really are out there looking out for folks, and I mean, they live what they speak. So anyway, it's great to see you guys out there. That's all I have, though.
Thank you, Christina. Mike? Nothing? Amy?
No, thank you.
Tim?
Yes, thanks. If you'll indulge me for just a minute, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce my intention to run for re-election this fall. It's been a number of years since I first began serving my community. First as a founding trustee of the Wyndham Village Homeowners Association, then as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, followed by 5 years in the Planning and Zoning Commission, before being elected to City Council. And I want to tell you, it's been a labor of love. The satisfaction I've experienced at serving my community as a council member has far outweighed any personal sacrifice. Together with my colleagues on council and with the support of city staff, I'm proud of our many accomplishments. However, I'm most excited regarding what I believe to be Dublin's bright future, from the continued development of the Bridge Street District to the development of the West Innovation District and the expansion of the Ohio University campus to the Northwest 33 Smart Mobility Corridor. So with that in mind, I hope to have the opportunity to help lead Dublin into that bright future over the next 4 years. And in the meantime, I hope to see you around town. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. John?
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of our stellar citizens, Mr. Hidaka, and he came to the opening of the Fujiwara art exhibit, and I got to say that, and this is along with all the other wonderful things that are served there, I think he spent $1,000 of his own money just to go to Akihana and get some fantastic sushi for this exhibit. So this guy is everywhere. He's, as you know, he's all over the place. He never misses a beat, nor does his wife, and just super, super people. So proud to have him in this community.
Thanks, John. And on a similar note, John delivered to me a really nice letter from Mayor Tomoyuki Atsuka from Moscow. He goes through the cherry blossoms in that tradition, and then he says, I express my cordial thanks to the people of Dublin for their hearty hospitality at the Friendship City signing ceremony in 2015. All of the townspeople who made the travel to that ceremony speak of how wonderful Dublin was. He also mentions the taiko, the drum group that we sent over there, and that activity, he's very glad that it was tightening the borders between our cities. He talks about Fujiwara and his art and how proud they are to have him displaying his work here in Dublin, and that the Dublin Kaufman High School will be sending students to Moscow, and Moscow will be sending some exchange students back here to Dublin. So we're real excited about that, and it's just a very, very nice letter from the mayor, and he expresses his friendship, and he hopes that Dublin and Moscow will become stronger through every age group, businesses, and throughout the world, too. So I thank him very much for that letter. Anything else, anybody? With that, we are adjourned.